Hello and welcome back to Take Two. I'm Brennan Klein. Last week on the main feed of Alternate Ending, they discussed their top 5 anticipated summer movies, which is the first time that we've been anticipating movies in theaters in what feels like an eternity.
It's been a good 14 months for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say, I don't know when I'm coming back to theaters. The call to being in the physical theater space is weaker for me. Like, I appreciate the group experience, but I don't, because as a person with photosensitivity, I don't appreciate how there are lights lining every stairwell that are blaring in my eye. I always need to find the exact seat and crouch down to the right position to use other people to block all the light so I can just focus on the screen. But that's neither here nor there. I am happy that movies are coming back theoretically. But
Yeah, you can definitely listen to the main episode to hear the level of enthusiasm I personally have for the next few months of cinema.
oh yeah, I mean, I haven't been commenting on your podcast post recently, and that's just because it
Well,
keeps.
conflict of interest.
Yeah, well, no, look, I'm gonna win the movie prize. That's fine. But I've been oh, I need to do this, and then get distracted or whatever. And this time I was like, no, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna make my top 5 list, and then I looked at everything and I was like, I don't have anything. And I can't just say In the Heights, kind of. That can't be my answer. So I skipped it this time. But Tim, one of your answers was the concurrent theatrical and HBO. Oh, Tim's the guest, by the way. I assumed you guessed that. Everybody.
Hi, it's Tim. This is not Carrie.
Yes, was the concurrent theatrical and HBO Max release, The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It, which is the third film in the main branch of the Conjuring franchise. And so I thought we would take a moment to sit down and just talk about the Conjuring universe as a whole, which is, other than the MCU, probably one of our biggest, financially successful interconnected movie universes right now.
Yeah, I mean, it stands to be seen how long that lasts. I think certainly this is not a franchise that benefited from a forced year off, but it's been doing very well for itself, even though the last couple were doing less well for themselves than they had been.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also horror, so the threshold for turning a profit is actually pretty low because they make these films pretty hard and cheap.
Oh, yeah. And I guess we should. Okay, so where should we start? I'm gonna ask which one of the Conjuring movies is your favorite first.
I mean, it's the first one.
I mean, yeah.
There's a purity to it. There's a let's just make this good old spooky movie going on without necessarily tarting it up with every one of these movies has to have cameos from 7 other monsters in case one of those monsters hits hard enough to get its own movie. And I prefer that, to be sure.
Yeah, I agree. And especially as amusing as I think 2019's Annabelle Comes Home was, it definitely was an audition reel for all of these different monsters.
Right. And I liked that movie a lot, but yes, there's no question that that's what's going on with it.
Yeah, and my favorite thing about that movie, which was Michael Cimino, not the director of The Deer Hunter, but the adorable actor. But
Yes.
I can get my unadulterated dose of him because he's in the Hulu show Love Victor now, which is a spinoff of Love, Simon that is essentially exists to criticize Love, Simon, which is why I love Love Victor. But I can just watch him on that and not in a movie that thinks it's funny to call him Bob's Got Balls every time he's on screen, which is not a joke.
It is not.
Or a nickname. So anyway, that's just my little rant about that one. But yeah, The Conjuring, the first Conjuring, it is the best, and it really has solidified the thing that James Wan has been doing in horror right now, which is taking a lot of shit you've seen before. There's nothing in The Conjuring that is bringing something new to the table as far as a haunted house /
not.
maybe possession / exorcism film towards the end. But he's doing it with such panache and flair, and kind of just shaking up the Yahtzee cup and just letting them roll out in these new arrangements, that it's still like very energizing to watch.
Yes, no, I completely agree. Which I mean, you can say and very accurately so that that's James Wan's thing, and this is to a certain extent his franchise. But I think even the films he did not direct or have anything like immediately to do with the screenplay or the film themselves, I think that is kind of one of the things that's at play here. Is like these are not fresh feeling movies, but with only a couple of exceptions, these are movies where I feel like the particular iteration of these things that is not fresh gets me somehow. And I don't know if we're going to go through the films chronologically or if we're just going to kind of hop around, but certainly I'll have a lot to say on that thread when we talk about The Nun.
Okay. You know what? Let's do it chronologically, with the knowledge that whenever you and I talk, we tend to hop around anyway.
That's a good point.
So, the first Conjuring, it introduces us to Ed and Lorraine Warren, played by Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. You know, the beautiful, angelic, pure couple who have never done anything wrong that
Certainly
exist in real life.
The very sincere ghost hunting Catholic couple whose goal is to deepen our understanding of the world around us and the world to come, and not hideous con artist frauds.
Exactly. This is basically the Greatest Showman of the horror realm as far as biopics go. But yeah, so we're introduced to them in this one, and then we're immediately following that up with Annabelle, which was a choice. I think this is like, you mean it's sophomore slump. It's the MCU making the Incredible Hulk, or Nightmare on Elm Street 2: Freddy's Revenge. It's the one where they didn't.
This would be more like the MCU making like Fantastic Four from 2005
Maybe
or from
so.
2015.
That's fair. Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm just trying to say it's like they hadn't kind of like put their stamp in cast iron yet of how they were going to be making these movies. And what'd you think of Annabelle, Tim?
I think Annabelle is an affront to God and man.
Yeah, so I had an interesting journey with Annabelle, because the second that I left the theater, I was like, "Oh, I had fun." Like there's there's some solid scare sequences. There's that one that they stole from Mario Bava's Shock, where the girl like runs and then turns into an adult woman after she passes a threshold. And then there's the scene in the laundry room basement, which is really excellent and supposedly directed by James Wan himself, who kind of stepped in for reshoots.
That certainly explains why it's the closest that movie has to a good scene.
Yes.
Although even then, I feel like that's the less good version of how that scene plays out in my brain, just even hearing the description of it.
Yes. I agree with that. But the instant I stepped out of the movie theater, I was like, oh, like, you know, I'd been caught up in it, and I was like kind of wavering at a 7 out of 10. But with
Oh my word.
I know, but it took me about 20 seconds of thinking about the movie and just picking at a thread and just watching it slowly unravel, and it brought me to a 3 out of 10 by the time I got home.
Okay.
Like the second I turned my brain on and started thinking about Annabelle, I was like, holy shit, this movie was terrible.
I've told this story in my review on the website of Annabelle, so this is not news. But my experience watching Annabelle is that the millisecond that the credits started rolling, like the movie could not possibly have been done any shorter, someone in the audience very loudly said something to the effect of, well, that was a piece of shit. Does everyone agree that was a piece of shit? And that got a bigger laugh, or just a bigger vocal response period, than literally anything in the movie. And it was. I find it to be a paralyzing combination of not remotely scary and not at all good at being a period film, because this is very expressly set in the early 1970s, as many of these Conjuring films are set in a really specific time and place.
Sometimes quite randomly.
Oh, very much so. I'm not saying that it's like a good strategy. I'm just saying that
Hmm.
they are all. That's one of the things about the franchise.
Yeah,
Um,
and not to be that guy, although you're that guy a lot of the time with me. So I got it. I think Annabelle's set in the '60s because it's set like kind of
oh, is it set in? Oh, it's set in '69. Of
yeah, it's
course,
set before The Conjuring,
because
which is
it
the '70s.
well, because it also brings in the Manson killings in a insanely tone deaf way, which is my third thing. So it's not scary. It's not a good film. It's not a good period film, and it's immoral. It has very very poor taste.
Yeah, it does. Up to and including the grand finale. Spoiler alert: we're gonna spoil at random. Any of these movies. The part with Alfre Woodard as the neighbor. So expressly, whatever that weird priest that they try to make a recurring character that nobody gives a shit about. Um, he's like, okay, so the demon inside Annabelle wants your child's soul or whatever, but he cannot take it. You have to offer up the soul to the demon. Like that's the way that the demon works. The demon wants to like scare you into delivering the soul to it. So it's like, okay, great. So the demon can't actually do anything. Let's just chill. Let's just vibe. But then meanwhile, the end of the movie is Alfre Woodard jumping out of a window to sacrifice herself to save this white family. And it's like, no, you didn't have to do this. Why are they letting you
Right?
do this?
It's bizarre. It is a poor piece of storytelling on top of being just so boring and so. I mean, like The Conjuring is famously a film that got rated R just because of how scary it was, which is clearly nonsense. It's not that scary. No film could be that scary, but it's got the moves. It's got some really terrific jump scares. It's got some really good slow boil, awesome sound mix. Just a lot of stuff that works to be good and spooky and scary. Annabelle is just so bad at that. Like they haven't even figured out how to do good jump scares. Like again, the laundry room sequence feels like it's pushing you in the direction of a jump scare that's going to work when it gets there, and it doesn't get there.
No, not quite. Annabelle is a lot of not quite and a lot of oh no.
Right, right. That's a good way of putting it.
But like okay, so scrolling through this list, I I don't think any of these films have a good third act. And that is a poison for most haunted house movies anyway, or most paranormal horror movies.
Oh
Um
yeah, I I will say that I'm fairly kindly disposed to the two Conjuring films' third acts, if only because it is very easy to imagine them being the same as the third acts from the Insidious movies, and they're much better than that.
you're right. Oh, no, sorry, I meant okay. So any of the ones coming up, like the first Conjuring,
Oh,
I don't have a specific problem with. The Conjuring 2. Let's just move on. So again, spoiler alert for the end of the Conjuring 2. The end of the okay, let me take you on a journey one more time through the Conjuring 2. So in the first couple scenes of the movie, there are these weird bookends with letters on them behind Vera Farmiga's head as she's talking to her daughter. First of all, The Conjuring 2 is set in the early '80s, I believe. But I was trying to read the.
now I get to be that guy. I believe it's set in the late '70s because it starts with the Amityville haunting.
Okay. Oh, but then I think it cuts to.
I don't think it jumps that far ahead.
Okay.
Well, it's around the turn of the '80s.
Yeah. It's yeah. Um, we never claimed to be full experts on the Conjuring universe. But yeah, so there's these bookends behind her, and I was just super distracted by how giant these letters were, and I was like, "What are they spelling? Like Valek, whatever." And then there's a scene in the kitchen, and they have these fridge magnets that also spell out Valek, and I was like, "Okay." And then there's a moment where she asks the demon what the demon's name is, and she starts like automatic writing, like scratching letters into a Bible that she just doesn't look at later. Um, she just like kind of is like, oh, that was weird. I'm gonna put that aside and never think about it again. And then in the end of the movie, she's like, oh, the trick is I have to shout the demon's name at it to make it go away, which is super stupid to begin with. And I was just sitting there like, "Oh, the demon's name is Valak. Can we? Let's do it. Let's go." And then she was like, I don't know. Wait, don't I have a Bible that I wrote the name in? And I'm like, Vera, we know his name is Valak. You didn't hide it well. Just do it.
And that is all very fair and good. Although I will say, in defense of, all you have to do is scream the demon's name at it and it will go away. I believe that actually is canon in the most literal sense of canon. I think that is one of the conceits of the Catholic rite of exorcism.
Okay, well, that's too bad for the Catholics.
I'm not saying that it's a good thing. I'm just saying I think that is actually like real, quote unquote real.
Okay. No, you're probably right. And also, I mean, look, a lot of The Exorcist is just them screaming at the devil, like the demon. So it isn't. Exorcism is probably a little less dynamic than they want us to think that it is.
I think so.
But okay, fine. I will allow that it's real, but they could have zhuzhed up the reality like they did with the reality of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
That is extremely fair. Or the reality of so many exorcisms in so many movies.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking, wow, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, The Conjuring 2, it's set in England. It's this, I forget the name of it. It's like the something poltergeist is the case that they're dealing with.
Right. It's like some super British place, like the Bromley Field poltergeist or something.
Yeah, like Eldridge or Binghamton upon Time or whatever. Who cares? But so this, the intersection with reality with this is that, okay, I do love the real story of this. So it's about this, kind of family in a lower income household that still has a giant basement that's just fully flooded. That was not the true story. Sorry, I'm
especially because I don't think basements, I mean, they exist in the UK. I don't think they're a thing the way that they're a thing in the States. I might be very wrong about that.
You might be. I wouldn't. I grew up and continue to live in California where basements do not exist, so I really have no frame of reference for basements.
Well, in the middle of the country, they're a thing.
Well, that's where you gotta hide from the NATOs.
Exactly.
Both Tor and Shark.
Yes. I thought you meant just like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I wasn't quite sure where you were going with
No,
that.
sorry. Sometimes, okay, so I was taught in like second grade that when I'm writing an essay paragraph, I shouldn't repeat the same word a whole bunch of times in the same paragraph, so I need to come up with synonyms. And that has kind of informed my entire life.
Okay.
Where I try to come up with alternatives for words. My brain just spits them out of me, and sometimes I just grab onto them and let them go.
I mean, I guess it would have been yesterday at this point, wrote a sentence for my very serious dissertation where I used the word background 4 times in one sentence. So clearly I'm less fluffed about repeating words.
See, that would make me itchy. I can't handle it. But also in that kind of thing, sometimes that's the only word that will do the thing that you need it to do.
There's also, yeah, that's very fair. Gotta go for precision, not art.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, The Conjuring 2, it's about this poltergeist that's haunting these 2 young girls.
Enfield, I looked it up.
Yes. Oh, thank you. So the real life situation. So basically, the girls were obsessed with, I think it was The Exorcist, some ghosty paranormal horror movie, and so that they were faking this situation and getting a lot of buzz out of it. And the extent to which the Warrens actually visited this family was they showed up for 2 days and offered to help them exploit the situation to make money off of it, were rejected and went home.
Yep.
That is the from the case files of the Warrens. That's what happened. And then my favorite thing about this is that the haunting stopped because the girls found a new obsession when Grease came out. And then they were just obsessed with Grease after that, so they moved on from the horror stuff.
That is a detail I had not encountered, and that is a good detail.
It's really good.
It's really good.
And so what's your take on The Conjuring 2, Tim?
So The Conjuring 2, and I appreciate you giving us the real version of the story. This is, I think, the point at which you need to just, if you're going to keep up with this franchise at all, you need to make a pact with yourself that the characters in this film franchise, Ed and Lorraine Warren, are fictional movie characters.
Oh yeah.
You need to just move the real life Warrens away. They don't. They're terrible charlatans who are responsible for co-perpetrating the Amityville horror fraud, which is one of the just grossest, I think, bits of fraud in the history of American paranormal research. Um, and say, okay, this is a movie about these fake people who happen to be named Ed and Lorraine Warren. And I think a whole bunch of things that are all going to coalesce into one point, I promise.
That's all I do.
I think the Conjuring films, if they have, and the Conjuring films, like the actual
The main
Conjuring
branch.
films, not the Conjuring Universe, just those two, soon to be three. I think one of the things they do that makes me really love them, that really endears them to me, they get that when you have Vera Farmiga in your cast, you treat her like a queen. You give her a good part. You give her an arc. You give her shit to play. Because so many Vera Farmiga roles are basically, here's this insanely underwritten the wife character. Do something with it. And then she gives like the best performance in the movie. I'm looking at you, The Departed. And and I love that about her. I love that she can take the literal, just emptiest roles and turn them into something that's like generative as an actor. But I like it even better when the script is like, okay, you're the protagonist. You get to do everything. This is your movie. And I think The Conjuring 2 really nails that because it's about this fictional Lorraine Warren's like crisis of her Catholic faith. It's a very, very Catholic movie. Whether it's real Catholicism or just movie Catholicism, I can't say. But like that's the driving force of this film is all of this kind of very heavy, guilt-ridden Catholicism, and they bundle this up and they hand it off to Vera Farmiga, and she just makes a 12-course banquet out of it, and that is why, even though here's where we really start to get that auditioning monsters for future movies thing. We see both the Nun and
The Crooked Man.
the Crooked Man. Thank you. So not the Slender Man. That's something else. But yeah, the Crooked Man, the Nun both show up as like to be seen later characters in this movie. The plot is just not the poltergeist haunting is not even as interesting as the haunting was in the first movie, but it's giving me so much Vera just angsting out over religion, and I'm here for that.
Oh yeah, and I agree that the Conjuring branch has thus far produced the best of the films, and also the relationship between the fake Warrens. Like it has this kind of like lush, almost like classical, like romantic, like throb to it that's really nice. Like the chemistry between her and Patrick Wilson, who I would never call like one of our great actors necessarily, but who is a, a very milquetoast, pretty solid kind of guy.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. Vera Farmiga really is a blast to watch suffer a little bit. But you bringing up the Crooked Man, that I thought was the most ridiculous poll for that movie. I thought it looked really, really stupid. Like
It's really stupid.
yeah, watching it in the theater, I laughed out loud uncontrollably. Like I try not to derisively laugh at movies in front of a crowd, but I couldn't hold it in during the Crooked Man sequence. And then they announced they were gonna. They're at least developing a Crooked Man movie. It seems to be kind of suffering a little bit, and I hope it dies on the vine, because that would be that would be a no from me, dog. um, but I will say, I mean, I am always in support of Javier Botet getting roles. He's
Sure.
the monster actor who played the Crooked Man, but Javier Botet has a lot of better opportunities out there, and he has taken them.
Yes, indeed. This is very true.
Anything else about that movie before we move on?
Uh I don't think so. I mean, for me, the big thing is just like I wanted to get my piece in about Vera, and this is the last one with which to do it. So I wanted to make sure I went on that little rant.
Yeah,
So thank you.
it has been a while. Yeah, that was 2016. We haven't gotten
Yep.
a meaty Lorraine Warren since then.
Well, we're hopefully going to be getting one in just a couple of weeks.
Exactly. Thank goodness.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll talk about it. But yeah, 2017, we got Annabelle Creation, the second Annabelle movie. That was oh, David F. Sandberg, yeah, the director of Lights
Yeah.
Out. He made that one.
Yep.
And also it starred Lulu Wilson, who was the star of Ouija: Origin of Evil. So she likes to star in the pretty good sequels to terrible movies.
Right. Better yet, the pretty good prequels to terrible movies.
Oh, yeah.
Which feels like it's somehow an even harder thing to handle, and that's to me the big takeaway from Annabelle Creation. Like I think it has been trumped since then, but at the time it was like, holy crap! Like here's this, like Annabelle is a terrible movie monster. Annabelle is, so we don't think we actually spelled it out. Annabelle is a doll, a haunted evil doll.
Oh, we know. Everyone knows.
I just not everyone knows.
I know.
Most people know, but so Annabelle in quote unquote reality. I mean, there's a real doll that was really called Annabelle. Is a Raggedy Ann doll, just a run of the mill Raggedy Ann. The Annabelle in the movies is this vulgar, over designed, like ruddy faced, demon eyed porcelain monstrosity that, I mean, you would not want to have in your neighbor's house. It is just so palpably malicious. So anytime we see this thing on screen, it's like, okay, just fuck all the way off. That is not a haunted doll. That is like just a parody of a haunted doll. That creation, Annabelle Creation, turns that into a pretty fun yarn, I would say, especially coming off of the first Annabelle, which I think is just atrocious. I definitely think it's the worst in the series. That took some doing, and they did it, and I think that's very impressive to me, is that they redeemed Annabelle at all, and that they did it in the form of a story that kept me going, honestly. Not the freshest thing in the world, like you've seen all these ingredients before, but I liked them. I like the way the Yahtzee numbers came up this time, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I think that Annabelle Creation is the first of the spin-off movies to capture the thing that The Conjuring is doing, which is to deliver some great Jack-in-the-Box scares, pour a bunch of atmosphere on it, and not shock or surprise you in the sense of any like narrative hallways that it's going down that are surprising, but to just really deliver on the thing that it's there to do.
Mm-hmm. And to do it with I would say potentially better than necessary acting, because I do actually think Lulu Wilson, all 10 years of her, however old she was, I think she's pretty solid for a kid actor in a horror movie.
Oh yeah, she's great. And I would say the part where Annabelle Creation is at its worst is when it's trying to tie in with the first Annabelle, because it introduces these paranormal activity-esque confusing narrative nuts.
It does.
Where because it's set at this like orphanage full of girls is staying at this weird country house because of some sort of polio epidemic or whatever. And so one of the girls ends up being possessed by the demon inside Annabelle, and she like wanders off at the end to be adopted by the family in the first Annabelle, and that in that movie her as a teenager gets possessed by Annabelle. So it's like, wait, so Annabelle unpossessed her and then possessed her again later, and it just does. It's another thing where if
it's like the shark in Jaws. It just really gets pissed off when it loses and it goes after the family.
Yeah, it does not bear thinking about, and I'm well, I mean, we'll get there, but I'm glad with what they did for the third Annabelle of really not trying to push
really
that
just
narrative,
jettisoning that entirely.
Yeah, that was the right move. As good as Annabelle Creation was, as a creation of atmosphere and things like that, the story is still that final scene is a little ludicrous.
Yeah, no, it is. I think possibly the single film that suffers the most from being part of a franchise, A, because it has to set up this terrible movie. B, it sets that movie up very badly. And C, it gets us a nun cameo that is just like, oh, come on, just fucking calm down, please.
Oh yeah, like the nun who runs the orphanage is like, I visited this weird nunnery in Estonia. Here's a picture of me with this scary face behind me.
Right.
I
It's
totally
like,
forgot
okay.
about that.
I found that moment to be troubling enough to actually like leave a paragraph about it in my review at the time, if I recall correctly.
Oh yeah.
It's cumbersome. It's no different than the Guardians of the Galaxy like racing by a tube that says Howard the Duck or whatever. And it's at least there it's like just kind of part of the overall busyness. The Conjuring movies like stop ice cold to like show it to you and be like, "Okay, do you want this one? Is this the one you want? Because it's coming up next."
Yeah, they're
And
like,
I find it bad storytelling on top of being just like sort of it's obviously crass, but it can be crass and still sort of invisible, and it's just hyper visible in these movies.
oh yeah, they're like, which is better, left eye, right eye,
Right.
left eye, right eye. Oh, and I've stumbled across a timeline of when these films are set, which is coming in very handy.
Oh, good.
So, the first The Conjuring is 71.
Okay.
The second The Conjuring is 77.
Okay.
So it's 8 years after that. Annabelle is set in 67.
71 to 77 is 6 years.
Wow, what the fuck was I doing? I was looking at. I don't know. Never mind.
It's early where you are. It's okay.
That's okay. Annabelle is set 4 years before The Conjuring in 67. And Annabelle Creation is set 12 years before that in 55.
Okay.
Um, I need a blackboard for all of this. But now we're going to go on to the film with the oldest setting. It's 1952 in The Nun,
The Nun.
which I think it's pure gothic atmosphere. That's what this movie is
Yeah.
there for.
If there's going to be one that you and I like strongly disagree on, and I don't know what your opinions are necessarily, this would be the one it would be.
I know I like this movie less than you do.
I think everyone in the world likes this movie less than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely okay. So two things because I don't think that The Nun is a terrible movie. Certainly not on the level that Annabelle is a genuinely terrible movie. The Nun does have a little too much of Thaisa Farmiga seeing a creepy nun walking down a hallway and then just being like, I should totally follow her, and not in the horror movie sense of like I'm scared going down a hallway, but of her going, oh, that nun's probably my friend. I should see where we're going.
Right?
So it's the idiot horror movie plot of it all was a little.
So much idiot horror. It has, I don't know. So the Conjuring scare, like what I think of as being the quintessential jump scare of the Conjuring franchise, is a character will be walking in a space there's a lot of negative space around their head, and they will glance off to the left, say, could be the right, but they'll glance off to the left. The camera will pan to see what they're looking at. And we then think, oh ho, it's going to pan back and there will be a thing behind them. And it pans back and there's not. And then it pans slightly in the opposite direction and then pans back and then the thing is shown up. So it gives us sort of like, it doubles the length of the like inevitable the thing is going to show up in the negative space. That to me
Mhm.
is the signature scare of the Conjuring movies. They use that exact scare like 7 times in The Nun. They just overuse it so hard.
Oh yeah, they're really beating on the fright gags that they're using in The Nun, and again, from what I remember of your review in 2018, that's not necessarily what you were specifically enjoying about The Nun. Um,
No, no. What I specifically enjoy about The Nun, as you said, in regards to I think creation, these movies go hard on atmosphere, and this one goes by far the hardest. Like it has that just crazy cemetery where every single crucifix, and there's like 3 dozen of them, every single one of them is at a different acute angle, and like the whole thing is covered in 12 inches of thick underlit fog, bottom lit fog. So it's just like it's over the top with this kind of like Disney's Haunted Mansion, like like aggressively spooky but in a silly, goofy way atmosphere, which I love. Like that is the exact kind of atmosphere I want out of a gothic horror movie. It's why I love the late 30s, early 40s Universals so much. I just like that kind of very, very excessively ambitious, like enthusiastically just trashy gothic atmosphere.
Hmm.
Um, which this movie has in abundance. Great location, great cemetery. Even the hallways full of empty space of it all. Like they're good hallways. Is
They
the
are good
thing. They're
hallways.
very mildewy. You can smell the like corrosion coming off of the brick.
That is no, you're right, and I think that if nothing else, The Nun is zesty.
Yes.
And I think that the performance of Demian Bashir speaks to that.
Yes.
Which I think is an actively bad performance, but that is just pure camp. That is this weird concentrated energy.
The film has I believe I liked this line of dialogue so much that I put it as the like epigram to my review. It has the single worst exchange of dialogue in this franchise and one of the worst in cinema, which is that the priest played by Demian Bashir is talking about this object is, it's like we have here like a relic from Jesus's cross or the blood of Jesus Christ or something like that.
Yeah, it is the blood
And
of Jesus in like a little
and
orb.
and one character says, "Holy shit." And Demian Bashir says, "The holiest." And he sells it. I don't know how he sells it. That's an unsalvageable line, but he delivers it with such robust ham bone sincerity that I'm like, "Oh, that was in the neighborhood of clever."
Yeah, it's a wild performance, but I think that kind of zestful, kind of weird artifice and camp that the nun wields. I don't know to what extent it is doing it intentionally, other than just the kind of robust overzealousness of pouring creepy shit onto the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that the finale of this, while stupid, is at least zestfully stupid, which
It
is
is, yeah.
Thaisa Farmiga spitting the blood of Christ onto the nun, which made me, oh, I literally
It,
LOL'd
it's
him.
the it's the good shit. It's the good shit.
It is funnier than any comedy I had seen in 2018. Oh, it was so good.
It's so good. And that sort of weird, just like the sort of robust, energetic awfulness of that decision, and I would even say the weird thing you've identified of she keeps going after nuns seemingly with no ability to recognize patterns, and she's just like, oh well, there's a person, people are good, hooray, I see another person. um this all feels to me very Lucio Fulci in a way, very sort
Okay.
of like Italian horror-ish, in a way that it is so divorced from human behavior, and it all feels like what we're watching is sort of like one of those weird dreams where every time you turn a corner you're like in a brand new location and like you sort of have to reset your brain. Like it has that vibe to me of just like it's so invested in the atmosphere and the sort of theatricality of it that it doesn't even really care about having a story. It just wants to have a whole bunch of moments, like individual moments that just kind of sock it to you and give you like, okay, here she's going to spit blood in the nun's face. And does it matter if that makes sense with anything else? It kind of doesn't. Like I think the film just really doesn't care. It just cares that this shot is working or not.
Hmm.
And I respond to that in the same way that I respond to it in a cheesy Italian movie. And
Yeah,
I mean like the cheesy Italian, not the good ones from the 70s. I mean your Demons 2 quality movies is what I'm talking about here.
yeah, and I totally understand that that went further with you than it did with me, but I respect some of the weird energy that the nun wants to bring to the table.
Yeah, I think The Nun is a blast. Like when you said favorite at the start of this, like obviously The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2 are better films, but I get a kick out of The Nun. I really do.
I I get it, and I forgive you. It's fine.
You know,
Um,
that's the worst thing is I don't even feel like I need to be forgiven.
no, and
It's
nor
not. It's not even a guilty pleasure. It's just a pleasure.
no, that's fine. That's fine. A movie that I don't think brings any pleasure, at least to me, is the follow-up, The Curse of La Llorona, um, which was
Which you
what?
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Which was vaguely hinted at being part of the Conjuring universe when it was coming out, but then it has a very specific tie, at least to the priest from Annabelle, and you see a little glimpse of Annabelle in the movie, and that's really the biggest tie-in.
Yeah, which I feel like you did yourself no favors by watching basically every other film ever made with La Llorona before
Mm.
this came out. And it got the impression that this was one of the worst of them.
Oh yes. Well, okay, so it's another situation. Like I did the full Godzilla franchise before Godzilla versus Kong came out,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a situation where I wasn't specifically watching them with the intent that Godzilla versus Kong would be the cornerstone of the marathon.
Oh, of course.
Um, and with the Curse of La Llorona, it was slightly different. Um, like I had just always been saying that La Llorona is such an interesting folkloric character that I always wanted a good movie to be made with her. And when this one was coming out, I was like, it looks like it might be okay, but I want to see what cinema has to offer first.
Sure.
So I wasn't watching all these movies with the intent that The Curse of La Llorona would blow them out of the water, which was
Of course not. How could it be?
yeah, which was good because it didn't. Um, and so in brief, La Llorona is a character from Mexican and South American folklore, who basically is in the biggest version of the story is an indigenous woman who was married to a Spanish settler. He ended up leaving her, and in a rage, she drowns her two children in the river, and then she is kind of cursed to, like, in the ghostly afterlife, wail and cry and try and find her children again. So she wanders along the river at night. So kids, if you go out by the river after dusk, La Llorona will find you and she will drown you. So don't go out by the river. And that's who she is. And the Curse of La Llorona does not make any of this clear.
No, it does not.
They're like, oh, she's just a sad ghost in a bridal veil who wants to kill. She will follow these white kids to their house. That's not what she does. She's very location specific. And it fucks up a lot of shit about the mythology, but that, again, accuracy is not what I would expect
Yeah, I was
from a
gonna say,
Conjuring movie.
That is not the problem. This is also the franchise that redeemed Lorraine Warren is like a
Yeah.
beautiful Catholic soul.
The-
It's just a bad movie.
That too. It's just bad all around.
It's like I go back. I think Annabelle is a worse film, like just like unambiguously so. But I do feel like Annabelle weirdly has more strengths that it could have converted into being good. I think this is it's just rotten. Like that, it has rotten foundations. The only good choice they made was to make the first major English language film about La Llorona. It's nothing works. Literally nothing works in this movie.
Yeah, and see, so the thing about it is that I kind of hoped it would make a lot of money so we could get another shot at La Llorona, and get someone else in there to do anything with it. Um, who was the shoot? What was the name of the lady? Linda Cardellini playing the mom.
Yep.
I thought that she was the best asset the movie had.
I mean, as with Vera Farmiga, it's a pleasure to see this franchise give actresses who don't get good roles a good role, or at least a big role in this case. Good role is probably doing too much work.
Like, I think she is very good at this kind of animalistic scream of terror.
Yes.
But the things she's doing it at are really stupid.
Really stupid. And it's like, it feels like it has to be so contrived just to make the ghost a threat in the first place. And when we see it, it's not scary. And even more so than the nun, this just over relies on doing exactly the same kind of jump scare like every 5 minutes, it feels like. And it not a film with a slow boil. It does not like let us sink into the atmosphere. It just goes. Like it just as soon as it can like have a kid walk into an alley and see the La Llorona in her veil, it's just like immediately the film is at like 100% and it doesn't modulate that. And it's just like the dialogue is bad, the story structure is bad, everything's bad. Every single thing is bad.
Yeah, it's not even bad in an interesting way.
No, I guess that's the thing. Annabelle is bad in interesting ways.
Yeah,
Interesting ish.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, just La Llorona. It's like it damages my soul because of how much I care about the. I don't want to say character, but like the being or the myth
The
that is La
folklore.
Llorona. And a lot of movies do Llorona stories poorly, as I learned in my marathon. But La Llorona is also, she is distinctly tied in with the literal inception of Mexican horror cinema. The first or at least the first surviving or like well-known Mexican silent horror film is from the early 30s about La Llorona, about around the same time that Dracula would have been coming out in America. And it's this deeply rooted, specifically Mexican like cinematic tradition, that again that they were like, well, let's just put a bunch of white people in it and completely misunderstand everything. And it's like, well,
Yep,
there we go.
pretty much.
But then that same year we get Annabelle Comes Home, which I feel like I covered my thoughts on that earlier. It's a fun kind of popcorn soap bubble of a movie, I feel.
It's a romp. This is my third favorite after the two Conjurings, and
Oh,
I
and
think
so it's
there
your
is
favorite
very.
Annabelle.
It's definitely my favorite Annabelle. Not even close. I think there's a sense in which it is more of a Conjuring than an Annabelle, really, and not just because Ed and Lorraine do get little cameos. Um, it's set in the same period. It's set in the mid-70s. I believe it's set between the first and second, if I recall
Yes,
correctly.
it's set 1 year after the first Conjuring, so 72.
I like that it has that kind of vibe. Like it's not really trying to tie into the other Annabelles. It is trying to tie more into the Conjurings. I also think so. So going back to the first Annabelle, which I sort of argued has some of the worst production design in this franchise in terms of just like getting a period feeling. I think this is almost certainly of the entire series. This is the film that feels the most anchored in a very, very particular moment. It's a very like mid 70s suburban feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And everything about the props, the sets, the costumes just builds that. And I love that about it. I love the sense of place. And I do, even though it's like horrible, how much it's clearly like, okay, this is a ghost we might do a movie with. This is a giant like hellhound we might do a movie with. The hellhound, maybe not so much. But like it you can tell so clearly that they're auditioning future movies. But I like the kind of, well, you said the greatest showman of the horror genre earlier in regards to its biopic. I kind of like the huckster quality to it. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
like, it's just showing off a bunch of goofy bullshit. I think of all the films in the Conjuring universe, this one has the lowest stakes.
Oh, for sure, because
And
you know the Warrens are going to be fine because you see them later.
right, exactly. And it's just like some malicious beings fucking up a couple teenagers' night for like a few hours, and it's very low key in that, and I like that
Yeah,
about it.
it is a carnival funhouse of a movie.
Yes.
And some of the auditioning monsters are better than others. Like there's a really, I think the Hellhound you're referring to is like this weird CGI kind of werewolf thing that they had that is really poorly executed.
Very poorly executed, although I do feel like they figured that out and they do what they can to make its off-screen presence much more important than its on-screen presence.
Yeah.
Like I think they don't think it looks good,
Yeah,
to their credit, sort of.
yeah, that's fair. And then there's like isn't there like a kind of ferry boatman that's kind of Bye Bye Man esque?
The ferryman who's a little Bye Bye Man esque. I'm willing to cut the ferryman some slack because I think the only genuinely good scares in this movie are built around the
Oh,
ferryman.
I didn't mean to introduce that as an insult.
Okay.
I mean, The Bye Bye Man's a terrible movie, but
Oh, The Bye Bye Man's arguably the worst movie.
uh, we'd have to narrow that down. It's the worst movie of some categories for sure.
Yes.
Oh man, but I own The Bye Bye Man on Blu-ray. It's a trip and a half.
Go with God.
You
Go
own the
with
Book
God.
of Henry.
Book of Henry's a better movie than The Bye Bye Man.
I look the Bye Bye Man wiggled its way into my heart for the scene where the hot one of the hot dudes that lives in the house, Lucien Laviscount, Leviscount, I think is his name. He thinks that Carrie Ann Moss winks at him, like the Bye Bye Man makes him hallucinate that, and then he winks at her, and then we cut to reality, and she's just staring at him like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And that amused me to no end.
I respect that being the reason you own the film.
And then also Faye Dunaway setting herself on fire.
Faye Dunaway setting herself on fire is much closer to my recollections of what the film is doing.
Oh yeah, it's that is a zesty movie, I say. And the Bye Bye Man has 18 different calling cards also.
Oh yes.
Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about.
We're here to talk about Annabelle Comes Home.
Yes, and the Ferryman, he does. Yeah, I like the Ferryman. He does some spooky stuff.
And I'm trying to remember. There was one other thing. There's the Ferryman. There's the Great Shook or whatever it's called, and there's
like a Jack in the Box thing.
Something. I don't remember.
I don't recall.
I very clearly remember there were 3 new creatures, and now I just can't remember what the third one is. So
That's
it's clearly did not leave an impression.
What are you gonna do?
Yep.
But now let's turn our eyes toward the future, Tim.
Let us do so.
The Conjuring, not called The Conjuring 3. It's The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, coming out this June. It is directed by Michael Chavez, who directed The Curse of La Llorona. So that is...
I know.
That's a big ding, just going into it. But we are going to get Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga back, and we'll see how it goes.
I mean, to a certain extent, these movies are just Vera Farmiga delivery systems for me, and I know that I'm going to get that from this one. It is potentially the most I'm willing to go to bat. I will say, and I'm glad I picked it because we would not have had this episode if I hadn't put this on my top 5. One of the main reasons this film was on my top 5 was because I felt really bad having 2 Asian art films on my top 5. I wanted at least one like vaguely mainstream thing people had heard of.
That's fair.
So,
well, that's the way of Rob and Carrie.
You know.
Rob will bring the popcorn movies, and Carrie will bring a movie you did not know existed and was going to come out.
Exactly.
Like Fatherhood with Kevin Hart.
Yeah. But that's a different conversation.
That is a different conversation.
But I mean, I think The Conjuring 3 is surely going to be the worst of the 3 Conjurings. And if we say that Annabelle Comes Home is an honorary Conjuring, probably going to be the worst of the 4 Conjurings. But,
certainly.
I'm going to hold out hope that it is still, at least for me, on par with The Nun. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to want or hope for.
Yeah, that's fair. And I don't see it bottoming out further than Annabelle.
I don't see how that's possible.
That is an Everest of poor achievement.
I mean, my feeling is if all you do is give me something equally as bad to The Curse of La Llorona, but you put Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson in it, already you've given me something better than The Curse of La Llorona. So to me, that's even represents a lower level than I expect this film to hit.
Yeah, and if removing the Llorona elements would definitely make me less personally mad at the movie, which is also a good improvement.
For sure.
Although the title is quite bad on this one.
I am infuriated that it's not called The Conjuring 3.
Yeah, just do it. Like, for when you introduce subtitles is when you're trying to hide how deep in the franchise you are. We're not that deep yet.
We're not that deep. Like, I mean, we're like however many, like 9 films deep
in the universe. Yeah, exactly. Like, The Conjuring is still a name that has potency to it. We haven't like quite ruined a Conjuring movie.
Right, because the Conjurings, I believe, are both still at above 100 million. They're certainly the two biggest grossing films in this franchise.
Yeah. And yeah, so we don't just call it The Conjuring 3. People know it's too wordy, it's too stupid.
It's wordy, and it's like, it's not like spooky wordy, like multiple films have been called Deliver Us from Evil, which is too long and too many syllables.
Mm-hmm.
But at least that has like a sort of ghostly whisper as you say it out loud. The devil made me do it is like a sitcom catchphrase from the 70s.
Yeah, it's like a family circus caption.
Right. And it's just like, this is not, I don't think you can say it in a threatening way.
The devil made me do it. Yeah, it's not happening.
You can't. Sort of like, to bring things back full circle, sort of like the Bye Bye Man.
Which is another thing that's great about the movie, is that the accursed phrase that is meant to carry all the power and terror and potency is the Bye Bye Man.
The Bye Bye Man.
And then so it's just full of
Bye Bye Man.
and then it's like, don't think it, don't say it, don't think it, don't say it. And then he's like, oh, Bye Bye Man. And it's really, it is a special movie to me.
I get it.
I watched that movie opening night after officiating a wedding.
All right.
So I was still in my like tuxedo.
That's amazing.
It was, I think I married the Bye Bye Man.
I mean, it sounds like you might have done that.
Potentially. But yeah, and the rest of the future of the Conjuring universe, we have an Untitled The Nun sequel and The Crooked Man TBA, hopefully TBD, which is to be dead.
I am of the belief that we need to see. I think they're waiting on the box office numbers for Conjuring 3. The devil made me do it. Before they move forward on any of the future, because like the trend has been down.
Yes.
Like La Llorona and Annabelle Comes Home were both softer than they should have been. Particularly Annabelle Comes Home, because that was actively being advertised as part of the Conjuring universe, and it's actually good and actually got like pretty solid critical reviews. So for that one to have kind of underperformed, I think casts doubt on the franchise, and I think they're waiting to see how this one does.
Yeah. Look, as a cinematic pervert, like, I want all franchises to keep continuing forever.
Obviously.
Because I love the flop sweat desperation of what movies do to try to keep a story going. I'm someone who has watched all 10 or 11 Children of the Corn movies. Like, I have a problem. So I hope they make a Crooked Man movie so I can watch it and be like, well, that was stupid, and go home.
I mean, I hope they keep making Conjuring sequels that keep advancing 10 years every time, so that eventually it's like Lorraine Warren on a spaceship.
Oh yeah, like those newer X-Men movies. Like, they just keep,
Yes.
they live in this amorphous time stream that just keeps slipping ahead.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, I would. That's the only way to make these movies, and then we just need her, like, talking to a ghost on her AirPods. It's gonna be great while Billie Eilish plays in the background.
Yes. But yeah, so I am not optimistic we're going to see any further Conjuring movies past this summer, but if we do, I'll be there for them. I believe in the mission of this franchise.
Oh, you know what's going to be their last ditch thing is, I know they did a glance at Amityville in Conjuring 2, but they're just going to have to do an Amityville one. Like, that's going to be, if they can scrape the money together for one last hurrah to try and make money in the theaters, I think that's what they're going to do.
I mean, there's a whole rights weirdness going on, but yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, rights are weird, but also I'm sure the rights are forgiving enough, because there's infinite movies called, like, oh, you watch them all. Amityville Theater.
I know exactly. No, I just mean, like, in order to make a film about the Luntzes.
Yeah.
It has a slightly more specific set of rights issues than to make a film about the DeFeos or the town of Amityville.
Got it. Yeah, that's... we'll see. That's my Nostradamus prediction for where this franchise is gonna
Okay.
go. Like I, especially if The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, is going to suffer in the box office. Crooked Man is out of here. Like that's not happening.
Yeah. And I mean, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It is not going to do well. It has the HBO Max day and date thing, which every film that has had that has suffered from it.
Mm-hmm.
And theaters aren't quite back yet. They're close. And I think how A Quiet Place 2 does is going to tell us how close they are. But also the Saw 9 didn't do very well. So
Oh yeah, I mean, Saw has an interesting box office situation in this, in non the 2000s decades. Like Saw did, I believe, a 10th or 15th anniversary re-release of the original movie.
mhm.
That made it was the lowest box office take of essentially any movie ever. It made
That's
like
impressive.
$500,000 or something like that,
Okay.
and it was super grim. And so the Saw movies just haven't survived 2007.
Which, I mean, good riddance, but also you would assume that the first R-rated horror film in over a year would have gotten some eyeballs just by that fact.
Yeah, and well, that's the thing. I think it struck too early. Like people were getting vaccinated, but we're not anywhere close to even done yet, and that was like weeks
Right.
ago. And obviously, like public comfort. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like I said, I'm not personally comfortable going back to the theaters yet. I certainly want to. Like, I'm excited to get back. But I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this at the moment. Um, I mean, our situations are slightly different. You're in a more remote esque area.
Sure.
I'm living in the county that several months ago was the epicenter for the pandemic.
I remember that. I
Um,
remember that.
which is delightful, and so I'm a little more wary about everything.
Yeah, because I mean, I have been to at this point 5 movies since the pandemic started.
Y-
So
yeah, that's just not something that feels in the realm of possibility for me yet.
I get it. And actually, by the time this podcast goes live, that number will be 6. I will be seeing A Quiet Place 2 the evening of the day we are recording. So
I mean I'm so happy for you. I'm happy that we're back. I'm happy that you can watch movies the way they were meant to be seen, and maybe you'll add half a star to the terrible movies that are coming out this summer.
you know, I feel like at least nobody already got that half-star bump. So we'll see.
Yeah. Um anyway, so I think that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for coming on us with this conjuring journey. Well, coming with
Real quick,
us.
you asked me, but I didn't ask you.
Oh, okay.
Quick Conjuring films ranking.
Oh, I didn't ask you a ranking specifically.
No, I've one-upped it. In the middle of saying the sentence, I decided to one-up it.
Okay. Oh boy. Okay, so I'm looking at the list. Conjuring the first is number 1, obviously. Then The Conjuring 2, Annabelle Creation, Annabelle Comes Home, The Nun, The Curse of La Llorona, and Annabelle.
I think literally the only change I would make is I would swap Creation and Comes Home.
Yeah, I was getting that sense from you. And obviously this is kind of off the top of my head. I just think Creation is a smoother, more atmospheric movie, and it's hard to compare the kind of like dense atmosphere versus like fun crackerjack.
That's fair. My only counterpoint is that Comes Home has the most 70s grocery store I've seen in a movie that was not filmed in the 1970s.
Okay, and it does have the adorable reincarnated spirit of Michael Cimino in it, so
It also has that.
I can be convinced. But I'm going to stick with my list for the moment.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay. Anything else before we go?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. If you're not on the Patreon yet, you should be, so you can check out Tim and I on Bride of Alternate Ending discussing horror films. This month we did 1963's The Haunting. And you know what? this is coming out on May 31st, so let me spoil what our next month's theme is going to be. Like, due to a Patreon request, we're going to be doing a David Cronenberg movie next month in June. And the poll for that is going up tomorrow on the Patreon. So if you're not already there, you should. And then you can pick what movie we watch. And it will be,
Exactly.
whichever one is picked, will be a first time watch for me. So I'm very excited.
That is exciting. I think all of the nominees are ones I've already seen. I can't remember now what we put on the poll.
Yeah, it was definitely all ones that you had seen. I don't. Is there a Cronenberg movie that you haven't seen?
There's a couple.
Have you seen M Butterfly?
I have not seen M Butterfly.
Okay, I would not recommend it.
M Butterfly is not a horror film.
No, it's not. That's why it's not on the list, but I was just curious. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, everybody. Find all of Tim's reviews and more at alternateending.com. You can find me on Twitter at It's Raining Brens. I don't know. Credits. Bye, everybody.
Bye.